Oi, fellow comrades, it is Squidtard here, and I know it's been a little bit of a while since I posted anything on here, but I've been so busy with schoolwork and stuff, so now that has almost passed, I'm ready to get back to making YouTube videos, and I wanted to start out with basically what is considered, of course, we still have bowl games, we still have the playoffs, we still have the national championship, there's still a lot of college football to be played, but we're going to take a look back at the regular season and take a look at the top 10 most surprising teams, at least for me, in the college football season. So kind of like how I did the pick'ems, this is entirely based on my college football offseason predictions that I did for all the Power 5 teams. And, I had a certain record for every single Power 5 team. Like, say, I had like Oregon at 11-1. I don't even know if I had them at 11-1. That's just an example. Let's say, Oregon, they went 11-1 this year, and I had them at 11-1, then that means, they aren't a disappointment or a surprise. You get the idea. But say I have a team like Colorado who wins, like 10 games like some people did, and they end up only winning 4. Well, they are definitely a massive disappointment. Or if I had them only winning 1 game and they end up winning 4, they're a pretty big surprise. You see the idea I'm getting at here. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys, at least based on my predictions, the top 10 most surprising teams for this college football season. So I'm going to start out with number 10. So at number 10, I had Washington, the Washington Huskies. I had them going 10-2 this year, and they ended up surpassing that by going 12-0. So I was 2 off, which means they surpassed my expectations by 2 games. It's been a phenomenal year for Washington, all things considered, and it's far from over. Of course, Washington, they won the Pac-12. They're going on to the college football playoffs. But as for the regular season, of course, they won every single game. I had them losing 2 games, and I forget who they were to. I think it was to Oregon and USC. They won both of those games, along with every other team on their schedule. And Washington, they actually had a pretty difficult schedule. It was no easy schedule to get by. Oregon State was a tough opponent. Utah, tough team to play. They also beat, they beat Oregon twice. They beat them, Oregon in the regular season, then beat them again in the Pac-12 championship. But, Washington kind of skated by a lot of their wins. For a lot of them, they only won by 1 or 2 scores. However, they were undefeated. They're still undefeated, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they play in the college football playoffs. They're going up against Texas in the Sugar Bowl, I believe. It's going to be a great matchup. I'm so looking forward to it. Going to be a great shootout matchup between Michael Penix and Quinn Ewers. Going to be a great game. But Washington, great team, surpassed my expectations. They're number 10 on the most surprising teams. So at number 9 for most surprising teams, I have Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech obviously is way lesser of a team overall by record than Washington, but I put them above Washington because I was only 2 games off with my predictions on Washington. I had Virginia Tech finishing out at 3-9, and they ended up going 6-6. So that's 3 games off from where I had them. So obviously, a little more surprised by Virginia Tech's record than I am Virginia. Now, as you can tell by my offseason prediction, I was very, very low on Virginia Tech this season. And, well, they exceeded my expectations, at least by a, significant margin. They won. They lost quite a few games as well. They were only 500 for the season, but I did not expect for them to go bowl eligible. They ended up getting a few marquee wins. Of course, the Pittsburgh win was a pretty good one. Wake Forest and Syracuse. I think their win against Syracuse was probably the most impressive. They also won on the road at Boston College. And, Syracuse, both of those games, they weren't one-score games either. They dominated both of those games. Same for the Wake Forest game. Now, they did lose quite a few games, too. A couple of head-scratchers. Purdue at home, Marshall on the road. You get the idea. But, as it stands for a team like Virginia Tech, this was not an easy schedule to play, but they are bowl eligible. They'll be going up against Tulane on the 27th. Could be a good game. I don't know. We'll see. Most people are going to pick for Tulane in that one, but the Hokies could give them quite a bit of a challenge, so I'm looking forward to it. But, yep, Virginia Tech, number 9 on the most surprising teams. All right, number 8 for most surprising, the Cal Golden Bears. So I had Cal finishing out at 3-9 this season, same as Virginia Tech. a lot of this is the same as Virginia Tech, really. They were a very inconsistent team this year. Had a few big wins, had a few, head-scratching losses. Actually, I shouldn't say really head-scratching losses. Cal, it's a lot different from Virginia Tech. To be honest, looking at Cal's schedule, they had quite a few games that were very, very difficult, and it's probably why I predicted them to finish out so low. They had to play, Auburn at home, Washington, Utah, USC, Oregon. These are some really, really tough games, and of course, they lost all of them. The Auburn game, Oregon State, Utah, USC, Oregon. You get the idea. Some very, very rough games to play. All things considered, but they did pick up quite a few significant wins along the way, including a win against UCLA 33-7 that finished out the regular season. And not only that, but it got Cal the bowl eligibility. They'll be playing against Texas Tech on the 16th of December. Could be a good game, I don't know. But yeah, Cal well exceeded my expectations. 3 games above where I had them going. So yeah, all things considered, Cal, I think, deserves this spot for the most surprising teams. All right, coming in at number 7, the NC State Wolfpack. So NC State, 3 games above where I had them going. I had them going 6-6. And, well, they went 9-3, and I picked either NC State or Wake Forest to kind of fall off this season. However, it looks like NC State has proven me wrong on that note. They had a couple of losses, of course, lost to Notre Dame, Louisville, and Duke, but all 3 of those teams ended up having pretty good records at the end of the season, so all things considered, not a bad season for NC State. They had a couple of marquee wins, won their last 5 games of the regular season, including wins over Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina. So quite a few marquee wins on that resume. They'll be going up against Kansas State on the 28th in a bowl game, and that should be a pretty fun game. But yeah, NC State finished out 9-3, not a bad record overall. They actually finished 3rd place in the ACC standings, so right below where Louisville was, which means that, if Louisville had lost another game, NC State would have been playing for the ACC championship. However, that didn't happen. Still a really good season for NC State, 6-2 in the ACC. Really good year, I think, for the Wolfpack, because I honestly thought they were going to have a down year. Well, they definitely proved me wrong. So good year by NC State. They come in at number 7 on the most surprising teams. All right, coming up at number 6, this is one I think everybody's gonna have in their most surprising teams list. Arizona, the Arizona Wildcats. They were definitely a very impressive team this season. I actually had Arizona going 6-6, and I thought they were going to be good enough to make a bowl, but they were good enough to do that and then some. Arizona, a very, very good season. They had a couple of head-scratching. The Mississippi State loss in particular was a head-scratching loss for Arizona. Had they not lost that game, they would have had a 10-win season, and they still have the possibility to. They play Oklahoma on the 28th in a bowl game. Going to be really, really fun. Alamo Bowl, I believe, is the bowl that they're playing in. Going to be a really fun game to watch. Looking forward to seeing that one. But anyway, back to the regular season. Arizona, a really good resume. They beat Washington State. Blew out Washington State on the road. Oregon State they beat. UCLA wins over Utah. A dominant win over Utah, to be exact. Something must have just clicked after the loss to Mississippi State, because everybody after that, they just continued to beat up on. Stanford was a little head-scratching. They only won that game by 1 point. But USC and Washington, both of those losses, they only lost both of those games by 1 score. And then, of course, they win 6 games in a row. Really, really good year for the Wildcats. Really good year for, the coaching staff, which, is a new coaching staff. So to see that Arizona has accomplished all of this, it's looking like the Wildcats are in a pretty good spot when they go into the Big 12 next season. So number 6 on the most surprising teams, Arizona. All right, so now we're treading into teams that have been 4 games ahead of where I had them predicted. I had this team finishing out 4-8, and they went 8-4. I'm talking about the West Virginia Mountaineers. Really, really good season for West Virginia, all things considered. Now, if you look at their resume, it's obviously not the most impressive thing you've seen. But West Virginia, a lot of people expected this to be Neil Brown's last year. A lot of people thought that this is going to be the break-it year for Neil Brown. The expectations for the Mountaineers were set at a severe low for this season. And, well, they exceeded expectations. And, regardless of the fact that a lot of their wins were close wins by like 3 points, 7 points, a win's a win. And West Virginia got a lot of those. 8-4. They finished out again, wins over Pittsburgh, Texas Tech, TCU on the road, UCF, which right now stands as a pretty impressive win. UCF was kind of a very, up and down team. Blowout win over BYU. Baylor went over Baylor to end out the season. Now Baylor ended up being horrific, but you see my point here. West Virginia, regardless of the fact that a lot of their wins came against lower tier opponents, they well exceeded my expectations for them. Ended up having a pretty good year. So is the future bright for Neil Brown and West Virginia? Perhaps. I don't know. We'll figure out a lot about what this team is going to hold when they play North Carolina on the 27th in that bowl game. But until then, 8-4, not a bad season for the Mountaineers. All right, number 4, and this shouldn't be a shocker either. I'm going with the Louisville Cardinals. So 4 games ahead of where I had them going. I had Louisville finishing out 6-6, and they finished the regular season at 10-2. So very impressive year for Louisville. My expectations for them were not very high. I didn't think they were going to be a really good team this year. I just didn't have many expectations set for this team. And well, they blasted my expectations out the window. They started out with 6 straight wins, beat Notre Dame at home in a pretty dominant win. And while Notre Dame definitely wasn't the best team, they finished out 9-3, I believe. That was still a marquee win for Louisville. They won against Duke, Miami. And to be honest, I do think Louisville was a little inflated just because of that Notre Dame win. You look at the other teams they beat on their schedule, and of course you can point to, the Duke win or the Miami win or the NC State win. All 3 of those games, pretty good wins. But then you look at these really head-scratching losses that they had. The loss against Pittsburgh, inexcusable loss considering where Pittsburgh finished out this season, and the loss to Kentucky at home too, I think definitely left a lot of people surprised. Now, because that was a non-con loss, they were still able to play for the ACC championship. And well, Florida State, to be honest, Louisville probably knocked out Florida State from playoff contention because of their defense. Whatever the deal might be with that, either way, it was not a bad season for Louisville, all things considered. 10-2, a very good year, and they have a chance to finish it out with 11 wins. They play USC in the Holiday Bowl. Could be a fun one to watch depending on which USC team shows up or if the defense shows up at all. Really good Louisville defense against a USC offense. Really fun. I think that's going to be a really fun game to watch. But either way, really good year for the Cardinals. All right, this next one was a weird one to kind of put up this high. If this were a regular, most impressive or most surprising teams, I would not have put them this high. But because of the fact that they were 5 games over from where I had them predicted, I'm putting them up this high. And I'm talking about the Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa State, I had finishing out at 2-10. And while they didn't finish out with a very impressive record, they still finished out the season 7-5. Now, they were a team that had their ups and downs. They lost to Iowa and Ohio. Yes, Ohio, early in the season. That kind of threw them off from any type of contention for the Big 12 or anything like that. And to be honest, once they lost to Ohio, I thought I was going to be right on my Iowa State predictions. But no, that turns out to not be the case. They beat Oklahoma State early in the season, 3 straight wins against TCU, Cincinnati, and Baylor. And they also, which I do think this is the most impressive win by far, the win on the road at Kansas State, 42-35. I think by far that is the most impressive win on the resume. And to me, I think that's definitely what makes Iowa State so impressive, at least in this season, is that they were able to get a huge win like that. Now, whether or not they can maintain that success further on, in the Big 12 and further seasons, no clue. Either way, though, big win for Iowa State to finish out with. They play Memphis on the 29th in a bowl game, so looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. And if Iowa State can win that one, an 8-5 year, definitely not a bad year for Iowa State, considering where a lot of people, including myself, had them going. All right, coming in at number 2. And once you hear the record that I had for this team, you'll understand why they're up so high. They well surpassed my expectations, 6 games ahead, in fact. And I'm talking about the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern I had finishing out at 1-11. I only thought they were good enough to win, one game. And well, to say the least, they well exceeded that expectation. They finished out the season 7-5. Now, a lot of people are going to point to the fact that Northwestern is in probably one of the worst, if not the worst, Power 5 division. However, all things considered, when you look at where Northwestern was last season and you look at all the offseason drama, Pat Narduzzi getting fired, them having to bring in this guy David Brown, who, a lot of people didn't know about, the expectation was set at a complete floor low for Northwestern, and the expectation was set in the basement, if we're being honest. And Northwestern well exceeded that, 7-5. And while that isn't the best year in any type of standards, when you look at where Northwestern was, this is a great year for them. Big wins against teams like Minnesota, Maryland, Wisconsin. That really fun game at the end of the season on the road at Illinois. Great season overall for Northwestern. A lot of hope and expectations going forward. They play against Utah in a postseason game on the 23rd. Could be a very fun one to watch. I don't know. We'll find out a lot about Northwestern when they play against Utah. Looking forward to seeing how that one plays out. Kind of like all the other bowl games that I've talked about. But yep, great year for Northwestern. Great year for this coaching staff that's just starting to get things rolling. And hopefully they'll continue to get things rolling. All right, and now for my number 1 most surprising team. This team, like Northwestern, also hit 6 games above where I had them going. I had this team going 4-8 in the offseason, and to say the least, they have well exceeded that. And I'm talking about the Missouri Tigers. I had Mizzou finishing out, like I said, 4-8. They went 10-2 this season. And going 10-2 in the SEC is never easy. And, Mizzou did, a lot of people thought this was going to be a make it or break it year for Eli Drinkwitz. I'll go ahead and say his name the right way. Eli Drinkwitz, a lot of people thought this was going to be his final year because of the expectations set on him and the schedule that they had to play against. However, let's just say that Mizzou did not go down easy. They delivered on expectations and then some. 10 wins on the regular season. Big wins over teams like Kansas State. That 60-yard field goal where they rushed to field, that was a huge win. And a lot of people thought that Mizzou was inflated by their schedule because of how easy it was towards the start of the season, but turns out that wasn't really the case. Big wins over Kentucky, and then of course the blowout win against Tennessee, which I think was probably their best win on their schedule. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Tennessee fan and, you're just propping up Tennessee. No, I do think that was their best win overall. Their only 2 losses came against LSU and Georgia. And you look at how both of those teams did, obviously those are not embarrassing losses at all. And then of course the wins over Florida and Arkansas, wins over South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Memphis. A great year overall by Mizzou. Now, they do go up against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, and, whether or not you think Mizzou's going to get blown out in that, or if they won't show up, or they're going to, all things considered, great year overall, great regular season overall by Mizzou, and I don't think they're going to get blown out in that game. I think they're going to give Ohio State a big fight, and I don't know if I'm going to predict them to win that game. However, I do think Mizzou, all things considered, is a pretty good team this year, and they well delivered, and it was a great year overall by Eli Drinkwitz, and he's proven that he can compete in the SEC, and we'll see how it goes next year with Texas and Oklahoma coming to town. I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out for Mizzou. But yep, that is my most surprising teams, top 10 most surprising teams based on my offseason predictions. Let me know what you guys think. Is there a team that was most surprising to you? Did you have a team that you predicted that was going to finish at a floor low, and then they well exceeded your ceiling, your expectations? Let me know down in the comments below and tell me what you think. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Until next time, I shall see you all when we take a look at the most disappointing teams based on my predictions, and oh boy, there are some disappointing teams, so we'll take a look at that tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video, and as always, power to Tardaria, and go Vols.